Dr. Robert Genetski. Trending up.
This definition I've come across of an economist is someone who loves to play with numbers, but never quite had the personality to make it as an accountant. Now, even among the handful of happy-go-lucky economists that happen to be out there, I happen to be one of the happiest, one of the go-luckiest. The reason for my optimism in the past quarter century is because of my belief that there are powerful forces at work that persuade politicians to adopt classical principles, whether they want to or not. These powerful forces are essentially the computer chip, the telecommunications revolution, including the internet, and the spread of democracy around the world.
Dr. Robert Genetski, a new era optimist, one of the nation's premier interest rate forecasters and investment advisors. He is convinced the economy is trending up.
I want every other row to turn around so that every row is facing another row. So every odd row, the first row, the third row, every odd row, turn around so that you're facing someone else. Okay, now I want you to stretch. Stretch, come on. Come on. Great. Now, I would like you to repeat after me, and I want to hear it loud. Hey! Hey! This guy is good. I'm going to pay close attention and learn some neat stuff.
Dr. Robert Genetski, more than 20 years in the banking industry, asset management, investment research, and investment banking operations. He has served on a number of corporate boards determining financial strategy. His theories reflect his experience.
There are headlines in the paper: natural disasters, a tsunami, a Katrina, a Rita, terrible effects. We read about terrorist attacks occurring. We read about oil prices soaring through the roof. We read about economic policies changing, one country after another. We read about the Federal Reserve raising interest rates for the 11th time, almost quadrupling them in just a little over a year. And we have a sense when we see all of these headlines, regardless of what country they occur in, that somehow this is going to affect me. Somehow this is going to affect my business. We don't quite know how or why it's going to occur. My objective today is to try and pull a lot of the confusion, a lot of the cross currents that are occurring in the world today together, make some sort of sense out of it, so that you can go ahead and understand what's going on in the world and why it's going on.
Dr. Robert Genetski taught economics at both New York University and the University of Chicago Graduate School of Business. A recognized writer on the economy, his books help shape major economic policies. His latest, A Nation of Millionaires, outlines government policies that will redefine our 21st century economy.
Back in the early 1980s, I worked for a fellow named Burl Sprinkle at the Harris Bank right here in Chicago. Burl Sprinkle went on to become President Reagan's chief economic advisor. And in that role, he traveled throughout the world, got to speak to all the leaders of the world. And he told me of the time that he went to China in the early 1980s, met with all the Chinese leaders. He said, "Bob, you wouldn't believe it." He said, "As I'm in the offices of each of these Chinese leaders in the early 1980s, I look back to their bookshelf, and what do I see? All the classical economic textbooks. And when I spoke to Deng Xiaoping, the head of China at that time, he said, he looked at me and he pointed to those books and he said, these guys had it right. This is how you create prosperity. And this is where we're going to take China in the future." And Burl said, he told him, "Well, you realize, Mr. Chairman, that if you do that, some people will get very rich, very wealthy, and other people will be not so wealthy, and there'll be a big disparity in income." And Deng Xiaoping said, "Yes, but those at the bottom will be a lot better off than they are today."
Dr. Robert Genetski, trending up, forecasting rapid growth, low inflation, and record-breaking stock prices.
The area that I've done the greatest amount of research in, the area that I believe has been singularly perhaps the most important in most countries for the success or failure of their economic performance, has been the area of taxes and tax rates. And what we're talking about here really isn't rocket science.